is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 2:03 the time. Well, today kicks off the first day of the workday payday here on WBAP. And hopefully you can get in with that. I'll give you different times of day. I'll give you the national keyword, and you text it in. I'll give you where to text it, and we'll text you back to confirm your entry. And it should be a good time. I hope everybody listening picks up $1,000. How about that? Wouldn't that be nice? All right. All right. We'll do that a little later in the show as well. We're going to open up the lines. You know, I got so much hate mail, email. If you want to email me, look, your opinion is your prerogative. Rick Roberts Show, 2 S's, Rick Roberts, and then show at WBAP.com. Evidently, I was wrong. I was wrong. I figured that most people wanted to solve the immigration crisis. So we got sanctuary city suits going on with the Department of Justice. Now we've got other suits that started today based on a census question. Are you a citizen? And by the way, prior to the poser-in-chief, Barack Obama, that question's been in there forever. I think since the 60s. By the way, I didn't check this morning. Lee, are you a citizen?
I am.
Okay.
I am a citizen.
Okay, you're not going to sue me for asking that question, right?
I might.
All right. David, are you a citizen?
Yes, for 44 years.
All right. No suits in the making now because I asked that question. You know why they're doing it, why California is doing it. The more people counted, the more representation you have. I mean, this is so nonsensical. It's the lead on every story. You know, what are we going to do about California? I don't care what we're doing with California. I really don't. You know, I broadcasted out of Southern California for 16 and a half years. Flew back and forth it was just, how do I explain it? You know, I have lots of friends in California, and they're great people. They somehow, some way, have found a way to exist in that state. But every 10 or 12 days, I would fly back here, and then another 10 or 12 days, I'd fly back. But when I was flying back to Oklahoma and Texas, it was such a relief. I mean, I still had to do the show, but it was does that make sense? It was like a weight off your shoulders. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Number one, I don't speak Spanish, which is a prerequisite if you live in California. Uno momento, por favor, numero uno grande, Pepsi. Okay, at least I could eat. But other than that, I'm done. But it was such a relief to leave when I did. Of course, you know, I got to see my kids and all that kind of thing. But... you know, it's why I just assumed everyone wanted to find a solution to the illegal immigration crisis that has been ginned up by Washington, D.C. Evidently not. Evidently, we're going to live with this for the next half century until we annex Mexico or we simply say we have open borders. I don't know. Maybe that's what you want. Because short of deportation of every single illegal in America, the people I'm hearing from, that's all we want. We want deportation. Well, unless you're going to go out and buy a few buses and start on your own, that's never going to happen because D.C. doesn't want it to happen. So I stand corrected. So I guess we can rehash the illegal immigration crisis till the cows come home, because evidently that's what everybody wants. So no guns in America and illegals in America all must be deported. And I told you yesterday there's only 2 classifications. And of course, D.C. isn't telling you that because they know you'd say, well, if it's just a misdemeanor, then why are we spending all this time, money, and resources on dealing with it? They don't want you to ask that question because it's a cottage industry for Washington, D.C. Well, just like so many things are a cottage industry. So I stand corrected. Do you forgive me, Lee? From now on, deport everybody. Now, am I back in your good graces?
Now you're talking.
Okay, all right. Deport everybody. You know, even if you have an accent and you're a citizen, I want you deported. That's right. I mean,
you're getting it.
You can take a good idea way too far. And we have been played by D.C. for so long that people, I think, become uncomfortable. You know, what did I hear? For 10 years, I heard, I want my country back. I want my country back. I even went off on a rant about it. I want my country back, right? Okay, so for the first time in a long time, we elect a non-political politician, Trump, you know, call him what you will, billionaire, playboy, developer, whatever. He said all the right things, and he got elected. Now, all of a sudden, well, I'm uncomfortable. It doesn't feel comfortable. Now I want something else. Well, you got to make up your mind. What do you want? Literally, you know, I've talked about this before. There's nothing to watch on television at night, late night. When I'm up, I'm prepping for the show late at night. I'm prepping for the show early in the morning. And there are like 5 late night shows. Used to be Leno and Letterman, I think. But there are like 5. And every single one of them it's nothing but anti-Trump jokes. And I don't find it humorous. It's almost too easy. And these email I'm getting, you want to solve the illegal immigration crisis? They're not, Washington would have you think, well, they're all MS-13. I know a little bit about MS-13. As a matter of fact, I had to do my show from an undisclosed location for over a year because of MS-13. Now, Don Kraft and his family, right before school started every year, would go down to Baja, and they spend time as a family, and they'd fish, and they'd camp out, and all that stuff. He got T-boned. He got T-boned by the mayor of Baja, and then was kept on a board, held on by a belt, in the local hospital until his family could come up with enough money to pay for the damage to the car. Even though it was the mayor's fault, he still had to pay for the car. Then when they got that done in the wee hours of the morning, well, now he needed another $7,000. So I exposed it. I got Madeleine Albright involved, as a matter of fact. And the mayor went down. Well, mayor had some very, very, very scary friends, shall we say. And I was notified by federal authorities, it'd be a good idea probably to do the show from someplace else. And then when it was all clear, they said, okay, you can come on back. But no, not every illegal immigrant is MS-13. Not every illegal immigrant's a drug smuggler or human smuggler or cartel member. I thought you wanted to solve this thing. Evidently, we don't want to solve anything. We're not realists. We want to continually get played by Washington, D.C., like a cheap pawn shop guitar. Tell me how bad it is. Tell me how bad the media's. Yeah. Nobody wants to solve anything. Nobody wants to solve anything. What do you want? I mean, generally speaking, I can follow a common thread. But there is no common thread anymore. Everybody hates the president because he had sex with a porn star. I don't really care who he had sex with. I didn't vote for him based on that. You know, the entire media landscape in this country is anti-Republican, anti-Trump. I've never seen it this bad before. What happened to realists? What happened to people? You know, my next door neighbor, your next door neighbor, whomever, those people are Democrats. You know, they're not sacrificing goats in the backyard at midnight, are they? No, some may. But at the end of the day, what happened to the realist? What happened to the people that said, hey, America's a good country? A lot of people fought and sacrificed, and some died. And it should be a good place where we can all live, where if you disagree with me and I disagree with you, we can have a conversation. That's not what I'm getting. What I'm getting is, I don't care where you're from, how old you are, just deport them. How do you think that's going to happen? Realistically, how do you think that's going to happen? Do you think the U.S. government's got a treasure trove of cash and gold and jewels, and they just throw? David's shaking his head. Yes,
of course they do. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Just like those people that were lined up around the block in Detroit, thinking they were getting free checks from OBOP. Yeah. All of a sudden, I turned into the Hanson brothers. OMBOP. Yeah. What are you doing? I'm here to get cash. Where are you getting it? Obama. Where's he getting it? I don't know, but he's giving it to me. I mean, is that the height of our idiocy in this country? All right. I got to step aside. Very quickly. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. I just, after a while, it's, all Republicans good, all Democrats bad. All liberals bad, all conservatives good. Is that where we are in this country? Does anybody believe that? Seriously. I mean, I know liberals and Democrats, for the most part, they own nonsensical legislation. Their platform is how much stuff can they give away, taking from one to give to another. Okay, let's check your afternoon drive. I'll be right back on News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 2:20 the time. Glad you're along. Rick Roberts with you in the Court of Public Opinion. All right. Bottom, I don't do open lines very often. But I was wrong on this illegal immigration thing. I thought we were looking for a solution. We're not looking for a solution. Have you ever met anyone that really doesn't feel alive, doesn't feel that their life is complete, doesn't feel they're fully engaged unless there's some kind of drama, crisis, something going on? Have you ever met somebody like that? I have a very good friend. One of my best friends is like that. You forgive him that because it's, that's how he views life. I can do without the drama. I can do without the crazy. I can do, how about you? I mean, wouldn't it be nice? You got California saying you can't ask if you're a citizen. You've got sanctuary cities where, these sanctuary cities evidently want open borders. Everybody wants their piece of the pie, political pie. And you foot the bill for everything. You foot the bill for everything. And you don't even know. It's sort of like boiling a frog. They don't even know it initially. But that's where we are. I mean, you're paying for all this nonsense in D.C. You're paying for the illegal immigration gravy train is chugging along just fine. And everybody's got a different idea. Now, fine them. That's it. Fine them. Well, if they had money, they probably wouldn't be doing what they're doing in the first place. If you had money, would you be out picking strawberries on the West Coast? Probably not. Living in a tent encampment in the canyons? Probably not. Fine them. Where's the money going to come from? I don't know. Just fine them. Deport them. How are you going to do that? Get buses. Get wagon trains. Get whatever you have to do. Get it. It's just, don't you get tired of rehashing the same old thing? And the reason you're rehashing it is because it's lucrative. It's a profit line for politicians and attorneys. Don't you get tired of that? Don't you get tired of reliving the segregated past? I mean, there was a piece in the Dallas Morning News, segregation is still a problem at Dallas Independent School District. 95% of the students at DISD are minorities, and they're failing. Why is that? Why don't you give some merit pay or do something and improve the school? It's not because somebody wanted to move to the suburbs. You ever see what happens when people in the inner city, work hard and sacrifice? What's the first thing they do? They move the hell out of there. And you can't blame them. So it's called self-segregation. That's what it's called. So if you got problems in the DISD because 95% of the students are minority, and if that's your reason, that sounds a little racist to me. You're saying that minorities can't learn as well as other people. Well, they don't have the proper tools. They don't have the proper teachers. Well, that's not on me. That's on you. It's on the school system. I mean, don't you get tired of hashing the same old thing over and over and over again? And the only people making any money off of it are the people that supposedly work for you? I mean, I had a dream. I had a dream the other night. I was doing a show. But it wasn't on the radio. It was a live show. There were like thousands of people there, and it was like they'd never heard that before. We were talking about removing Confederate statues and monuments and all the rest. Of course, we've got the Brain Trust in Dallas with the mayor and the city council. Some of the stuff they do, you just look at and shake your head. The people that are working for you probably do the least of anybody you're associated with politically. But what is it you want? Truly, what is it you want? Well, I'd like to be able to talk about immigration until my great-grandkids show up. Okay, well, you got that because politicians are making a ton of dough off of it, and they'd be more than happy to keep this whole thing alive for you. Is that what you want? Gun control, good grief, give me a break. Have we not gone through ad nauseum conversation after conversation after conversation about guns? I got something from a friend of mine. He saw this someplace. This lady tweets out, I was at a gas station. I saw these laying on the ground. I took them home, did some research, and found out they were bullets from an automatic assault rifle. People make me sick. How can you just leave this laying around? Showed a picture of it. They were drill bits. Drill bits. I mean, I don't think we're getting smarter in this country. I truly don't. I think we're getting, I don't want to say dumber, but less enlightened. We put ourselves off in these individual caves, and if you don't agree with me, you can't come in. Where'd that come from? Dissent and debate's a good thing. Isn't it? You tell me about gun deaths across America. In the meantime, you're killing 300 million people with abortion. Yes, I said people. I don't think we're getting any smarter. I don't think progression or progressive as a term is working anymore. All right, there you go. What do you want? Because I really, really am starting to question what I thought. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Eric Bushman standing by in the WBAP newsroom. Very latest breaking news. Check your afternoon drive, then back with what? Seriously, what do you want? What do you want, Lee? You want to go to break on time, right?
I do.
Okay,
I do.
Let's do that. All right, 2:33 the time. I truly, for the first time, in all the time I've been in radio and television, I don't think the political system can work anymore. And a good example of that, we're all here to deport the illegals, do this, do that. In the meantime, they pass a $1.3 trillion omnibus bill. Why not? They don't pay it back. You do. Last Wednesday, the whole point of this bill was to get some things done, right? Was to get some things taken care of. Nothing got taken care of as far as I was concerned. I mean, Trump, he's still talking about, well, we're going to build that wall, we're going to get that done. Remember that? Do you recall that?
On September 28th, we go further, and we're getting that sucker built. And you think that's easy? People said, oh, has he given up on the wall? No, I never give up. We have $1.6 billion toward the wall.
Yeah, it's estimated at $24 billion. Actually, what was passed in the omnibus replaces fences that fell down. Now, I know you're really busy and you don't have a lot of time to go through this, but what is this? You know, the deal was announced February 7th, passed shortly thereafter. Congress, being itself, didn't hammer out all the details. Why do we even have Congress anymore? They don't do anything. I said with my tongue firmly planted in my cheek. Congress set the current funding deadlines, of course. When party leaders arrived at an agreement to boost domestic spending, 128 billion, defense spending by 160 billion over a couple of years, I think. The deal included a variety of specifics, including new funding for disaster relief, opioid treatment, but more specifically, extended the current spending levels. In other words, it extended the spending of your tax dollars. It trusted Congress to use the intervening time to pass some kind of bill, an appropriate bill, or one big omnibus. You know what an omnibus is? It's a mishmash of various things. It was something that if your boss asks you to do something, to go in and determine, what needs to be done in this area or that, you just come back with a mishmash of all kinds of different things. There you go. There it is.
So basically you're saying it's a potluck.
Yeah, it's a potluck.
Okay.
What are you having for dinner? I don't know. It's a potluck. We'll see what it is. It's I'm sorry. It allowed everything to resurface. Why not? It's not their money. There's no accountability in Washington. We talk about, kids don't have any accountability anymore. It's top down. There's no accountability anywhere, maybe where you work. Everything from deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA, giving deportation protection to unauthorized immigrants who arrived as kids, a program that Trump has shut down and lawmakers have been scrambling to revive in some form, to border security, which now is a joke. We're going to build that wall. Now with $1 billion, you're not. Projected costs are almost $25 billion. This $1.3 trillion omnibus dedicated $1 billion. In the aftermath of that school shooting in Parkland, Florida, got to talk about that gun control. It also allowed resentment to come in about the scale of the spending hikes envisioned in this deal. Most Republicans, I think, were broadly supportive of the massive defense spending increase. Who's against defending the country, right? The White House bragged that it's the largest pay raise for our troops in a decade. I think we could have done that without a $1.3 trillion omnibus. But the more libertarian, limited government wing of the party, and that's generally where I come down, they prioritize order of importance. Get that? Cutting domestic spending over boosting defense spending. And that's pushback against the deal. Doesn't matter. Trump threatened to veto the thing, right? Not enough money for the border wall. Well, at the last minute, he signs it. The whole point of omnibus legislation, it's kind of a cobbled together, as I said, mishmash of provisions and priorities. It resolves a number of serious disagreements, but doesn't take care of much. Republicans wanted increased funding for Customs and Border Patrol protection and immigration, ICE, and an increase in the number of detention beds. The House and Senate deal included 328 additional officers. Now, think about this for a second. If you're a security freak, like I am, $1.3 trillion. If you spend $1 million every hour of every day, continually, every week, every month, every year, you wouldn't run out of money for 400 years. That's a lot of dough. And we got 328 additional officers, but required ICE to cut detention beds. I mean, $1.3 trillion. Are you kidding me? The White House at the last minute asked for $25 billion for a border wall. That's the projected cost for the whole wall, which was reduced to $1.6 billion. Hey, we'd like to get $25 billion for this wall over here. Oh, okay, we'll take $1 billion. Thank you. This was one of the factors that Trump thought about when he was talking about veto. While Democrat leaders have appeared willing to accept an omnibus that doesn't revive the DACA program, other Democrats in Congress suggested they'd oppose any funding bill that doesn't protect DACA. The House and Senate passed nothing on DACA. Trump, who has offered to provide permanent protection for DACA recipients in exchange for some old cuts to legal immigration, he got frustrated with the thing. He's no more frustrated than the rest of us. Both parties wanted to include provisions to stabilize Obama health insurance. That fell apart over disagreements about whether funding can go to plans that cover abortions and over disagreements about whether to stabilize measures that would hurt more than they help. The White House wanted to strip $900 million in funding from the Gateway Project. That's a $30 billion endeavor to add new commuter rail tunnels between New Jersey and New York under the Hudson River. Ultimately, in Dallas, I'm worried about a new rail system under the Hudson River. You bet. Ultimately, it wasn't included. Hundreds of millions in unallocated funding that could wind up going to the project did make it in. We don't know where that money's going to go. They say, well, we lost $900 million. Where was it? I don't know. It was unallocated stuff. I don't know where it is. Are you okay with this kind of political operation? The bill also bars employers from taking their workers' tips. Oh, okay. That cost me $1.3 trillion. I'm sorry. National Institute of Health, they got $3 billion. Census Bureau, they got $1.3 billion. The Community Development Block Grant, flexible federal program for cities and governments, $2.8 billion. Tiger, that's a grant option to transportation for transportation. That's $1.5 billion. The bill includes the Stop School Violence Act of 2018. Give me a break. The first time ever, the Congressional Research Service, they got a couple billion. So what happens now? Nothing. You pay for it. And as long as you're all, as long as you're looking over here, look at all this immigration stuff. Look at this. Oh, my God, what are we going to do about that? And gun control. Keep your eyes over here. Don't pay attention to what the right hand's doing. They're spending the country into bankruptcy. They're spending your grandkids into bankruptcy. Evidently, you're okay with that. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. I'm Rick Roberts, back with your calls next. All right, 2:48 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is Bryce and Keller. Bryce, how you doing?
Good. How's it going, Rick?
Good.
Love your show, man.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I got a kind of, the whole immigration debate. We've talked about it a lot in my family, just, current events and everything. And I thought about it a lot. I totally agree with you that deporting everyone is basically not an option. It's too expensive. It's too big of a job. It just can't happen.
Wait a minute. I want to make sure I heard this right. Bryce, are you conservative or liberal, by the way?
I'm very conservative.
Okay, and you're enough of a realist to understand that deporting 20 million people isn't going to happen.
It can't happen. It's impossible. I don't want to pay for it anyway. Everyone has to understand there's good people. I mean, granted, yes, they broke the law to get here, but there's good people in every category of life. And
it's a misdemeanor, right?
I did not know that.
Yes, it is.
But I've basically thought about this a lot, and I've come up with, 3 or 4 points, that would kind of, it'd be a plan to get these people out of the shadows, but maybe not a full amnesty plan. Let's put it that way, if you don't mind listening.
Sure.
So I would say that you need a time period. I was saying, 6 to 9 month grace period. So everyone who is an illegal would come and register, and they would not get deported, obviously, but they would come register so we know how many people we're dealing with. And the first point, after they get registered, the first point, which would probably throw this whole thing away because we know why the Democrats don't want them registered and everything. If you get registered, you cannot vote forever. You cannot vote for the rest of your life. 2, you have to pay a tax for the rest of your life. So that would be, I would say, a percentage of your income, I guess, every year in taxes. You can't receive any government benefits, even though you will pay into them. You cannot receive government help at all. You cannot become a full-fledged citizen unless you leave and start at the back of the line. And you will get deported if you get more than a Class A misdemeanor or Class B misdemeanor, however you want to classify it, I guess. And then anyone after the grace period that's not registered would have to be deported. And in order for all of this to work, you must secure the southern border first, or else there would be a wave of illegal immigrants coming over to try to hop on this.
Just like what happened when Reagan back in, 86, 87, decided he was going to take care of this illegal immigration problem once and for all with amnesty. You can't give amnesty unless you shut the front door. You can't do that.
Right. Yep. And I've ran this past a couple people, I guess, but I've heard, arguments, well, you're creating a second-class citizen. Well, at least they are citizens. At least they get to stay here and live in America. That's their benefit. They get to live here and not in the shadows. So, I don't know.
The problem is we shouldn't create more bureaucracy on top of the ones we already have. The only people making any money on this are the people in D.C. and the attorneys. Whether it's by border. Listen to this for just a second, Bryce. I don't know if you're aware of this. Whether it's crossing the U.S. border with a coyote depends on where you're from, or buying a fake U.S. passport, a foreign national who enters the U.S. illegally can be both convicted of a crime and held responsible for a civil violation under U.S. immigration law. Illegal entry also carries consequences for anyone who might later attempt to apply for a green card or some type of immigration benefit. The penalties and consequences getting progressively more severe if a person enters illegally more than once, all right? Tell that to the people that have killed so many cops several times. Then they run back to Mexico because there's no extradition. You have to it comes down to two ways. You're either improper entry or illegal entry. The immigration law actually uses the term improper entry, which has a pretty broad meaning. It's more than just slipping across the U.S. border at an unguarded, checkpoint. Improper entry can include entering or attempting to enter in the U.S. any time or place other than one that's designated by the U.S. immigration officers. In other words, away from a border inspection point, all right? Eluding examination or inspection by U.S. Immigration officers. People have tried everything from digging tunnels to hiding in the trunk of a friend's car. Attempting to enter or obtain the U.S. by willfully false or misleading representation. That's pretty obvious. Willful concealment of a material fact, which might include, for example, lying on a visa application or buying a false green card or, any of the things you can buy in downtown Tijuana for, $25. It's Title 8, Section 325 of the U.S. Code, USC Section 275. It's all right there. Criminal penalties, first-time improper entry, the person can be fined as a criminal penalty or imprisoned up to 6 months or both. I think the fine's $250. But just in case that's not enough to deter illegal entrance, which obviously it's not, there's a separate section, and then they vet them to see if they've been convicted of certain types of crimes. There's civil penalties. Do you see what I'm saying? The amount is like $50, not more than $250. So all of this, there's no teeth in it, really. If you want to see teeth in an immigration policy, look at what Mexico does when you go to Mexico illegally. You're lucky if you're not shot. I'm just saying, we've allowed this to happen by not having a southern border. I said it ad nauseum yesterday. Let's fix this. Take it away from D.C., take it away from the politicians, take it away from the parties. The parties are too busy trying to build their platforms. You know, it's not about you anymore. Politicians in Washington don't care about you. They care about their respective parties. And all you have to do to understand that is watch the news.
This is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
3:04 the time. You know, I was thinking during that last break, you know, we as Americans, whether you're on the left or the right or somewhere in between or apolitical, you know, we don't get very far when we start screaming at Washington to listen to us, do we? Even though they work for us, we really don't have much of an impact when we approach them under the umbrella of the federal government, right? Take the Senate, for instance. There are 100 senators, 2 from each state, right? 435 representatives in the House. So there's only a total of 535 people that are basically deciding how you and I live. 535 people. And to borrow something from Dana Lash from the NRA, approaching them as the 535 stand together, 100 in the Senate, 435 in the House, we get nowhere. We get nowhere. You know, I challenge everyone that's listening to me outside the state of Texas, and of course here, I think every representative, all 100 senators, all 435 in the House, we need your individual position. We want to know where you stand on term limits. For it, against it. Campaign finance reform, for it or against it. Illegal immigration, for it or against it. And finally, where do you stand on the Second Amendment? Do you follow what I'm saying? As our employees, those 535 people, I believe, are obligated to tell us, their employers, their position. And I'm not talking about a bunch of political speak. Well, you know, the hardworking people of America. Shut up. You work for the American people. The American people gave you your job through a vote. Now, we want to know 4 questions. Where do you stand on term limits? And we don't need a paragraph or 2. I'm for them, I'm against them. Where do you stand on campaign finance reform? Where do you stand on illegal immigration? Or are you going to continue acting as though we have open borders? Because that's exactly what we have. And 4th, where do you stand on the Second Amendment? I think that's a fair question based on the fact a retired Supreme Court judge just came out, retired of course, just came out and asked to repeal the Second Amendment. As our employees, we demand individually that you give us your position on those 4 things. Don't you have a right to know that? If the 2 senators from your state are for or against term limits, for or against campaign finance reform, for or against open borders, and we're not going to play semantics with you. We want to know specifically what you think about illegal immigration. And finally, are you for or against the Second Amendment? Well, you know, Rick, the Founding Fathers put it in the Constitution. Okay, stop right there. Are you for or against the Second Amendment as it is written in the Constitution? Don't you have a right to know? whether those 535 individuals making decisions for 300 million people, don't you have a right to know what they think about those 4 questions? I think you do. And I think if you won't answer the question to the people that you work for, you should be recalled. I think if you won't answer specifically, yes, I am for term limits. Yes, I am for campaign finance reform. Yes, I am for enforcing our immigration law. And yes, I am for the Second Amendment. If you can't answer yes to those 4 questions, then we have to seriously look at you and see if we can find a better employee. Don't you have a right to know that? Going up against them collectively under the umbrella of the federal government has gotten us nowhere. Nowhere. I challenge each one of those 535 people to answer those 4 questions. Not a bunch of political speak, just answer the question. Where do you come down individually on those 4 questions? If you can't answer or won't answer, then we should replace you with an employee that can answer their employer's questions. Does that not make sense to everybody listening to me? Whether you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent, doesn't matter. All right. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Let's go to Jeremy. Jeremy, where are you calling from?
I am calling from Missoula, Montana.
Missoula, Montana. Good to have you.
Used to be from Texas until last June. And the reason we moved from Texas is the illegal immigration, 100%. We are working in trades for rates that our grandparents got back in the 70s and 80s down in Texas. And there are other states out there who enforce immigration laws, who have had inflation over the last 20 and 30 years, who are paying what we should be getting paid, which is 3 to 4 times what Texas pays. And Texas, Arizona, all those southern states are all in the same boat as far as labor rates. So for someone to say that it's too expensive to deport all the illegals, it is much more expensive on the Americans' pocketbooks and our income than it is to deport everybody.
Well, not really. The numbers have been crunched, and that's not necessarily so. But in the trades, in the business that you're involved with, I can see why you would think that. It's
correct.
You have a vested interest. It impacts you directly. Therefore, I can see why you'd make that statement. But overall, it's not. It's not that. The numbers don't work out that way. What we need is we need to have our elected representatives tell us where they stand on these issues, and
enforce the laws that are already on our books.
Correct. I tried to impart to someone just a moment ago. There are basically 2 categories illegals fall into: improper entry and unlawful presence. Unlawful presence, believe it or not, is not a crime. Improper entry, most common crimes associated with illegal immigration, is most of them fall into improper entry. Under federal criminal law, it's a misdemeanor. And so, I mean, we've got open borders already. Anybody that says we don't have open borders is laboring under a sad misconception. We do.
Yeah, well, when people like me can't get certain contracts on jobs because we're not bilingual, you have open border problems.
Well, that's why
in the state of Texas, I shouldn't have to speak Spanish in order to do a construction trade.
No, you shouldn't.
There's no reason for that. And there's multiple jobs that guys like me lose down in the border states because we don't speak Spanish. We shouldn't have to, plain and simple.
That's because we have no enforceable immigration law. If it's a misdemeanor to be here, if you come into the U.S. At any time or place other than, like San Ysidro, the border crossing areas, if you elude examination or inspection, if you attempt to enter or obtain the U.S. by willfully concealing, falsifying, misrepresenting the facts, this is punishable by $250 in civil penalties. Does that sound like a border immigration law that has any teeth in it?
Not at all. None.
No. Even the so-called border jumping, those are criminal acts associated with illegal immigration to the U.S. Like all other criminal charges, improper entry, get this, even though it's a civil penalty of $250 and a misdemeanor, it must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt in order to convict. That's not immigration law. That's simply, giving the constituents. It's like throwing a bone in the front yard for the dogs to wag around while you go ahead and do what you want to do. Read Mexico's immigration law. You want immigration law? There you go.
Yeah, there's a reason why we don't try to immigrate to Mexico. There's a reason why everybody comes here to the United States.
Exactly, because we don't have an open door policy. We took the door off the hinges. We don't have a door. So if it's a misdemeanor and a civil penalty of $250 for each illegal entry, if that's all it's going to cost me to feed my family living in a corrupt country, I'll probably do it. I know that area where you are very well. It's a beautiful country. All the best to you. 3:14 the time. We'll be back in just a second. 4 questions. 535 people. 100 senators, 435 in the House. Should they not be required to answer 4 simple questions? Where do you stand on term limits? Where do you stand on campaign finance reform? Where do you stand on illegal immigration? And where do you stand on the Second Amendment of the Constitution? I don't want your political speak. Just give me a direct answer. Should they not be required to answer those questions? 3:19 the time. Aren't you tired? Aren't you tired of it? Don't you want it fixed? Or you just want to wallow in what this government has become? Getting played not unlike those hundreds and hundreds of thousands of teenagers last Saturday march for our lives. That's exactly what we're doing. Exactly what we're doing. With gun control, with illegal immigration. Good Lord. The lead is still Stormy Daniels, a porn star that Trump may or may not have sex with. I don't care. Don't you get what's at stake here? It's not just what future we have left and the time we have left, but our kids and their kids. George in Dallas. George, thank you for waiting. How you doing, George?
Okay. Listen, I appreciate your comments about the 535 people, but it's actually less than that. It's 60% of that number. So you're basically talking about maybe 260 people determine national policy when you look at 60% of each chamber.
I want to know where every U.S. representative stands on the issues.
Well, yeah. Rick, I think you got more chance of getting a straight answer out of a guy with a hand puppet. One a donkey and one an elephant.
Well, that may be true. That may be true, and as long as I have that attitude, you're right. But if I continue to demand what I should have, who knows? Maybe I'll get lucky.
All right. Rick, listen, my real comment here, and it's basically attached to what you're talking about. In my opinion, that the arguments about the wall, about more manpower to do border enforcement, that's all lobbyist-driven. I mean, it's a lobbyist's daydream to be able to think about spending billions and billions of dollars on construction, billions and billions of dollars on manpower, bigger courts, more jails, et cetera. And that the real essence of border control is E-Verify. And it's because, in Texas, everyone is concentrating on the Hispanic movement of people. It's not just Hispanics. It's Asians from Asia. It's Indians from India. It's people from Eastern Europe. It's people, for God's sakes, from Ireland who come here illegally. And they're taking jobs. They're taking good jobs. They're in every part of government. They're in every part of the private industry. They're taking real jobs that should be going to American citizens. And without E-Verify, you will never stop it. The wall will not do it. They will find a way over it, around it, through it. They will find a way. People now are marching through the desert. Half of them are dying. They don't care. They're going to do it. The wall will not solve the problem. E-Verify will, but it won't be passed because corporate lobbyists are ruling over the career politicians. Keep this in mind. When lobbyists contribute to a career politician, the money that goes into his campaign chest eventually becomes his. Even if he loses the election, he walks away with millions of dollars in contributions.
No,
that's legal.
No, it's not. No, I mean,
It is.
take a look. No, it's not. I'll look up the code for you. He has to pay off all his campaign bills first, and then the residue of that he does not get to put in his pocket. It's part of the campaign law. I'll read it to you. And as far as the border wall is concerned, I mean, you and I both know if there's a wall, there's a way. E-Verify is just another notch on getting something done. You know, we have such short memories. It wasn't that long ago when this guy, he got it right.
Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
It is. Are you going to make that stand? He's exactly right. There's no place else to go. And slowly but surely, because of our silence, because of our attitudes, because, well, no, one vote doesn't matter. Well, we can't do anything about the federal government. And because of that, we're going to lose it all. We're going to lose it all. I got to step aside very quickly. I'll look up that campaign residue code, and I'll have that for you when we come back. 3:24 the time. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 3:32 as promised. Last caller was under the impression that if a candidate drops out of a race or loses it, they get to keep the leftover campaign cash. They do not. I refer you to the Federal Election Commission permissible non-campaign use of funds. That's the Code of Federal Regulations dated January 1st of 2007. Basically, the question is, do candidates for elected office get to keep donations to their campaigns for personal, and the key word here is personal use after they lose or drop out? Or did those donations have to go to a party fund of some sort? Well, the full answer is the Federal Election Commission stipulates most candidates don't have much left over to begin with. Campaigning is expensive, and leftover money gets used for any outstanding campaign bills and debts. That's first. They can't put a dollar anyplace else but there first, including expenses incurred while winding down or abandoning a campaign or a lost political office. Candidates do end up from time to time with surplus funds, though especially if they're incumbent members of Congress who decide not to run for another term. State and local governments have their own rules, but those running for federal office, including presidential candidates, must abide by strict FEC guidelines when it comes to their extra campaign money. They can donate an unlimited amount to a charity, as long as they can prove it's a charity, or a political party. They can also, within limits, make contributions directly to other candidates. I think it's about $2,000 if I'm not mistaken. A campaign committee, well, it is, can give up to $2,000 per election to each candidate. If the committee is converted into a PAC, a political action committee, that jumps to $5,000. But to be established as a PAC, the committee would have to be in existence for at least 6 months, receive contributions from 50 donors, and make contributions to 5 recipients. This is one area where FEC is pretty strong. What candidates cannot do with leftover money is use it for any personal expense. Retiring federal lawmakers used to be able to pocket extra cash and use it for cars, yachts, vacation, clothes, pet grooming, whatever they wanted to do. All that changed in 1989 with the passage of the Ethics Reform Act. So the answer is no, they don't get to keep it. And that's good. They shouldn't. They shouldn't be able to keep it. I can kind of give you a more recent example of that. After horrible performances in a couple states, Republican presidential candidates Chris Christie and Carly Fiorina, they already called off their campaigns, right? And I think it was New Hampshire, maybe in Iowa. Well, Jeb Bush, he also decided to bow out. But what happens to all the leftover campaign money he'd raised at that time when he decided to, bow out of the race? He'd raised more than $150 million, the most of any GOP candidate. Well, one thing's for sure: upset candidates, they can't console themselves by, buying a new boat or sailing off to a vacation. The Federal Election Commission has strict rules about what federal candidates can and can't do with leftover campaign money. And the biggest directive is they can't pocket for personal use. And I won't go through, the whole thing again, but, they've got to spend it, and they or contribute it to make a contribution to a valid charity. But the goal is always to spend all the money. Running a campaign's hugely expensive. Barack Obama spent nearly $750 million in 2008. And in 2012, he spent $985 million on re-election. Mitt Romney, I think, spent almost $990 million. And insufficient cash is often a reason why these candidates go belly up. But no, they cannot put the money in their own pocket. And again, I'm not chastising you. I'm just saying that's incorrect, and it has been incorrect since 1989. And if you want to look at that, go to the Federal Election Committee's website and go to what is it? Leftover campaign funds or something of that nature. All right, let's 3:38 the time. Let's go to Ray in Frisco. Ray, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Ray?
I am doing great, sir. How you doing?
I'm good.
Awesome. I would like to mention a couple things here that the people of this country need to form a citizens committee so that we can get together and then we will have the questions to ask our representatives, just like you were saying, do you believe in the term limits? What happened to the $13 trillion in the last administration? Do you know where it went? Ask them questions like that. And I doubt that hardly any of them will show up, but the ones who do show up in front of this committee, they will be probably voted in office as if they answer truthfully. You have people like Nancy Pelosi and so forth who will not even show up. That's the people we'll vote out. But I think that's the only way that we can ask them questions, because right now we have no control over Washington, the swamp. They have control over us, and I believe the American citizens are actually tired of that. My second point is, why don't we demand a vote, term limits, to the American citizens for term limits, and also on the wall, and also any other thing that they're spending our tax money for that isn't right for the American citizens or our country. We can actually demand for a vote, I believe. I'm not sure.
Well, what you would be talking about is a public referendum.
Right.
That's a general vote by the electorate on a single political question that's been referred to those people for a direct decision. And I'd be more than happy to give it to them. Whether it's a citizen government oversight committee, whatever it happens to be, a lot of this stuff we need to return to the public referendum because
to the people. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean that's what needs to be done. But we need to hold them accountable for everything
these people up there are doing. Why do we to give the NFL $400 million? Why do we give Hollywood hundreds of millions? And why do we spend hundreds of millions, to kill babies? That money can go for the wall. That money can also go for poor people too. Well,
you don't get an argument for me. Very good call, Ray. I do not know why the American people, and I have traveled extensively, certainly domestically, but abroad on business. And we got the best thing going, or had the best thing going, but we won't for long. We won't for long. I want an answer, a direct answer from 535 people. That ought to be pretty easy to do. There are 2 senators from each state. That's 435 people in the House. That's a total of 535 people. Where do you stand? I don't want a 4-page essay. I want a direct, non-political answer to someone, be it a citizen government oversight committee, someone. Where do you stand on illegal immigration? Where do you stand on campaign finance reform? Where do you stand on term limits? And fourth and finally, where do you stand on the Second Amendment of the Constitution? Want an answer to all 4 of those things, and then after we get your answer, we'll watch your voting record. I'm telling you, you go up against these people as a government, as that entity, with 535 people galvanized to protect their own political nest, you're not getting anywhere. We haven't got anywhere so far because we keep sniping at this party and that party. I'm talking everybody. Where do you stand on it? Where do you stand on it? And then we'll watch your voting record. And in essence, that's almost a public referendum, is it not? Okay. All right. Let me do a little business. 1-800-288-WBAP. Rick, are you anti-government? I'm anti-government the way it is right now, yeah. 1-800-288-WBAP. 1-800-288-9227. Your call straight ahead. All right, 3:47 the time. Glad you're along. This is the Court of Public Opinion, the Rick Roberts Show. Let's get to your calls. Mike is calling from Chicago. Mike, thank you for waiting. How you doing?
I'm doing, Rick. Behind enemy-occupied People's Republic of Illinois. Hey, what do you do? Unless just for the record, I agree with you. The 4 questions are absolutely legit and should be asked of every one of them. Problem is, how are you going to get a straight answer out of a profession that's 70% lawyers by training and trade? Okay, that's why you get the answers you do. And then what happens when you already know the answers to those questions and you don't like them?
Well, then you vote.
What I got here.
Then you vote accordingly. You know, somebody said,
sure,
well, they're just going to lie. Well,
right.
It's not as easy as I know. We're a soundbite society. We want a beginning, a middle, and an end in 30 seconds. You know, asking the question just gives you the benchmark. Now you've got to watch and vet these representatives. And, of course, you will vet and verify the representatives that you're concerned with based on their voting record. How are they voting? Are they voting against directly what they told you? If that's the case, you got to vote them out, even if you like them.
Right. Well, that works in a place like Texas. It works in a place like Tennessee or Florida or someplace where you stand a chance of that working. But yep. What do you do in deep blue Illinois or Massachusetts or California or New York where you don't have an option? I've been voting my conscience and correctly my entire adult life. I worked for the government for 30 years. I'm a retired sheriff's deputy for 30. I know more than I want to know.
Right.
Okay? There's nothing redeemable about the state of Illinois. It's circling the drain. So I'm going to vote with my feet is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, you know, Chicago is an interesting place, isn't it? With the crime rate and the gun control laws that they have, and turning down any federal help. I don't know that was necessarily a bad choice to make, but Chicago is basically the epitome of everything that can go wrong, gone wrong within a state government. It's horrible.
That's right. That's right. Tell me. That's it. I was looking at Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. Tennessee's a little bit rustic for my taste. Love DFW, especially the Fort Worth side. Problem is that even out in Parker County, your taxes are getting stupid just like they are here. You better get your politicians back on the leash before you end up like Chicago.
We've got plenty of work to do in the state of Texas, but
yeah,
having worked
I love it there. It's a shame.
Oh,
it's
a great state, but I had it was a double-edged sword, really, of working in Southern California, San Diego, and Los Angeles for a bit, and getting flown back and forth every 10, 12 days for 16 years. So you get a good compare and contrast, if you will.
Sure.
So
there's no comparison.
I kind of see
better still.
Exactly. I kind of see the trouble coming down the track, if you will. But you're right. You're right. I mean, these 535 people, we need some questions answered, and they need to know. Okay, we're going to be looking at your voting record to make sure, as our employees, you are voting the way you believe.
Let me give you one more thought, okay? This is my summary of my entire experience in the People's Republic of Illinois here. Don't give them your money to use against you in the first place.
Absolutely.
That's the only way that you can stop it.
Absolutely.
Don't let them take your dough, and they'll use it against you for their purposes. We have a ruling class in this country. They don't give a damn about us, the country, the state, or anybody else, just themselves.
You're right. And it's just like, we've been talking about illegal immigration until my brain is numb, and gun control and all the rest. The fact is, we're simply talking to each other because the government, there's no vested interest in fixing anything because too much money's made off of it.
Yes, sir. I'm waiting for the rest of the world to catch up with me. In the meantime, I'm going to change geography, go someplace red, and bunker down. Let me know when the revolution starts. Let me know when you get serious.
Will do. Mike, I appreciate the service. I truly do. Troy in Terrell. Troy, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Troy?
Outstanding. I just want to chime in. We're listening to the re-election campaign. You got Lieutenant Governor Patrick. We spent $1.6 billion on border control or border security. We approached them with a $200 million plan that would cover every inch of the border with video surveillance, closed circuit TV that cannot be hacked, cover the 800 miles that are dead space with telecommunications, and we spoke to their chiefs of staff. The only person that's been any help has been Senator Bob Hall. He has pushed as hard as he can to everyone, but we can't get in the office with anyone of relevance. We went to meet with Ted Cruz. When we got to Washington, he had to be back in Texas, so we got to meet with his border security person. We've met with Senator Brian Birdwell, that's supposed to be over Texas border security. The morning we met with him, he had the flu. He couldn't make it in, so we got to speak to his people, and we were told we're going to see what President Trump's going to do because he said he will secure the border. There is no interest in this, regardless of what they're saying, what they're campaigning
That's
on.
what I'm trying to get to. That's the message I'm trying to give to people.
And I've been doing this for 3.5 years. Governor Perry, he opted over to, well, I'm not running again. The next governor, that would be a good thing for them to get on when we had the
what capacity did you work, Troy?
I'm sorry?
In what you said you've been working on this, in what capacity?
I have a foundation, and I've got telecommunications experts that are vested in making this happen. All I am is the brain, I guess the brain that came up with the idea, and I found the people that can make it happen.
Well, you know better than anyone else. I mean, what's the border with Mexico and U.S.? About 1,900 miles, something like that. And Texas's border with Mexico makes up the lion's share of that, about 1,200, 1,250, I don't know exactly, but about 1,200 plus miles. There is no political will in Washington to fix this. None. You know, that's been the message I've been trying to scream to people forever. You know, this is a cottage industry for Washington, D.C. They don't care about this. They want things to continue just this. Remember, during the election, I was talking about the status quo. This is the status quo for D.C. That's why those 535 members need to answer those questions to the American people that put them in their places, put them in their positions, gave them the job. We're the employers. We need those 4 questions asked, and then we follow their voting record after. As far as the wall goes, I know it sounds good, and no, I'm not dogging on Trump. I'm just saying, I don't think you're going to get 2,000 miles of wall built with $1 billion when the projected cost is 25. He asked for it. He didn't get it, but he signed the omnibus bill anyway. Basically, what we got was enough to, put down some T-post and string some more barbed wire, and that's about it to those areas already fenced but falling down. How do you see that as resolving the issue?
This is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820 WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 4 minutes after the hour. Coming up, your chance to win $1,000. Just text the national keyword, which I will give you in just a bit. And then we'll text you back to confirm your entry and your chance to win $1,000. How about that? Not bad, huh? All right. I do this from time to time simply when I get frustrated with the government at all levels. City, county, state, federal. It's not as widely known as other holidays, so a lot of Americans aren't even aware that September 17th is Constitution Day. Now, if you're a millennial and you don't know what the Constitution is, it's probably not your fault. It probably wasn't taught in public school. But it's this really cool document that the Founding Fathers put together, checks and balances, if you will, of how the government's supposed to run. Our premier founding document, give it some thought. And although the day is intended to, shine on the federal Constitution, it should be encouraged that we think about the importance of the 50 state constitutions as well. That's what I want you to remember. As the federal government continues to usurp more and more power from the states, being heavy-handed, overreaching, aggressive, it seems that James Madison's words in the Federalist paper number 45 become increasingly meaningless. And I'll tell you what I mean. Good piece, Ohio House of Representatives. The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government, the Founding Fathers referred to it as the general government. We now call it the federal government. Those powers delegated to the federal government of the United States are few and defined. I want you to get this. If you don't get anything else, get this. The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. Not only were the powers granted to the federal government small, intentionally small in number, but the founders were also very, 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 very clear about what those powers were. Military acts, foreign commerce, international affairs, negotiations, along with some others. Basically, federal powers were granted mostly for those things that occurred externally, like war, best executed not in your backyard. When states come together and pool their resources toward a larger effort, like funding a national military that would defend all the states. Madison continued, and again, Federalist Paper number 45, if you haven't read it, you ought to. The powers reserved to the several states will extend to all, this is what he said, James Madison, the powers reserved to the several states will extend to all the objects which, in the ordinary course of affairs, concern your life, your liberty, your property, and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. You get that? That's you, man. That's your life. That's your liberty, your property, and in improving prosperity. He was talking about you. That wasn't to come from the federal government That wasn't to come from the welfare state. He wasn't talking about food stamps. He wasn't talking about a government nanny state. He wasn't talking about the very platform that the Democrats run on. The powers reserved to the several states will extend to all the objects which in the ordinary course of affairs concern the life, liberty, and property of the people, and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity. The founders believed very, very strongly in states' rights because they got the fact that the surest way to maintain individual liberty was to instill safeguards against centralized power. Highlight that, centralized power. They didn't want that. Not only would establishing several smaller governments, the states, afford people the ability to move elsewhere, but they would also have more of a say in the public affairs of their surroundings. More simply, bottom line it, citizens would be closer to the people who were making decisions on their behalf. Thomas Jefferson once said, and I'm paraphrasing, "I wish not to see all representatives living in Washington, but instead to the states that elected them under the watchful eyes of the voters, away from those that would buy and sell them in the public marketplace." What was he saying? There's no need for you to be in D.C. with all the technology we have. Did you know every representative maintains an office, obviously, in D.C., but also in their respective states? It's staffed and maintained with your money. There's no reason for them to be in D.C. with all the technology we have. But as Jefferson once said, and it's true today as it was then, they ought to be in the respective states a majority of the time under the watchful eyes of the voters so they can not easily be bought and sold, lobbyists, special interest groups, in the public marketplace. It just makes sense. Consider how far we have come from those founding principles. More and more and more and more of our decisions, which should be made at a local, as local level as possible, are being made at the federal level behind closed doors. Education, healthcare jump to mind number one. As we look forward and celebrate the signing of the Constitution, you might want to call to mind the emphasis our founders placed on keeping powers in the hands of the states. Consider the very people who drafted the U.S. Constitution itself had enough distrust in federal power that they made clear that most of our decisions should not be made in the nation's capital. Are you aware of that? I know generation after generation you become desensitized and you just take it for granted. Well, they're going to do what they want to do, say what they want to say, sign what they want to sign. We just pay for it. That was not the founding principle. That's not what this nation was founded on. All right. 4:12 the time. Sometimes I wonder if that even resonates with people because it's been so long, if ever, you were taught that. It's not too late, but it's getting close. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk, 820 WBAP. All right, let's go to Keith. Keith, thank you for waiting. Where are you calling from, Keith?
I'm between Martin and Groesbeck on the road, Rick. Thank you for taking my call.
You bet. Good to hear from you.
I listened to your 4-question quiz for a potential representative, and mine is actually 2 questions. The first is, do you understand that the left intends to destroy this nation? And the second is, do you intend to fight them?
Well, pretty broad, but I like it. Keith, not potential representatives. I want the 100 senators, 2 from each state, and the 435 representatives in the House. I want those 535 people to answer those questions now, which will give us a chance to see how they vote based on what they say they believe.
Yeah, yes, sir. I understand. If you got a minute, I would say that I'll be able to vote for Ted Cruz this year, and I intend to. Got no issue with doing it. My congressman is a Republican who voted for the omnibus package, and I have called his office and told a staffer there that I want him to know I'm highly disappointed in him for that. And I told them, and I say that the only time to really hammer on a Republican incumbent is in the primaries. I did not vote for my congressman or John Cornyn last time I had an opportunity, and I never will vote for him in a primary. But if they survive the primary, it's down to them and a Democrat. They got my vote at that point.
Well, it's going to be quite different than it was last time around. It will be interesting to see. The mainstream media, Keith, is not even tipping the iceberg about what accomplishments this administration has done in the last year. People are going to have to go get that information for themselves. They can listen to the show. We try to get it out there. But it's going to be a much different. I'll be honest with you. I think based on what I've seen and what I've heard, the midterms, which historically are low voter turnout, I don't think the same thing's going to hold true in November. I think it's going to be a bloodbath for Republicans.
Well, if that's how it turns out, they earned it. But I would still, I'd hate to see the House go Democrat.
Well, you're right. You're right. I'm right there with you. Keith, I appreciate the call. Be safe out there. We appreciate it. Bob in Dallas. Bob, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Bob?
All right, sir. Thank you for taking my call. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. Simply put, you've heard Nikki Haley addressing the UN along with President Trump, making comments that the United Nations is basically worthless, that we're dumping a lot of money into it. NATO, I think she was making reference to NATO, that they're not helping. Combined with my aggravation, along with probably millions of Americans, I'm disabled. I've blown out my back 3 times now. Tried to get Social Security the first couple of years, and I was rejected until I got another surgeon and another attorney to help me. In the meantime, I had a neighbor from Bosnia that laughed and mocked me mercilessly, telling me that he's a refugee from, obviously, Benghazi, and he got it within a month from SSI. My point is that I don't understand why we give individuals coming into our country with no questions asked SSI benefits, and along with that, Medicare, Medicaid. They don't have to put a dime into the system at all, and this is why we're going broke with Social Security, because hundreds, millions of them are hitting our country on a yearly basis, and they have the audacity to tell us, well, in the next 4 or 5 years, before it was 10 years, now it's 4 or 5 years, we're going to be broke. They're pulling money out of general funds right now because Social Security is bankrupt itself. The fund that the nomenclature that they use, I guess the category, I'm fumbling about here, so bear with me. But I understand through a lay lawyer friend that basically the money's coming out of general funds somehow or another. I don't really fully obviously understand how that's happening or how it was set up the first time. My whole point is that the public needs to vote on monies that are going to other countries. We have the United Nations that are supposed to be helping these countries. We're always being told to dig deep in our pockets. We're a compassionate people, but it's gone way too far now.
No, I don't think there's any doubt, but one big reason for that is we have 2 political parties in this country. 2. One political party, their entire platform is, what can the government give you? What will I give you if you vote for me? What gifts from the public treasury can we bestow upon you if you'll simply vote Democrat? Well, it's no surprise that we've become a welfare state. It's no surprise we've become a nanny state. That self-determination, that, pursuing opportunities and sacrificing, that's nowhere in the Democrat platform. The Democrat platform is all about what can we give you. Well, see, here's the problem with that. The government doesn't create income, prints it, borrows it, or taxes it. It doesn't create income. It doesn't punch in at 8 and punch out at 5. It doesn't have a diamond mine underneath the Capitol building. The government can't give anyone anything without first taking it from someone else. And what Democrats won't tell you when they say, well, we want to give you free health care. We want to give you free tuition for colleges and universities. We want to give you, free benefits for food if, you don't make enough money. They don't tell you, but somebody's got to pay because we don't have it to give. So the next time a Democrat says to you, I want to give you this, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, next question should be, who's paying for it? Well, maybe your neighbor, or this person, but that doesn't matter as long as you get yours. When one of the two major political parties in the country is entirely entrenched on redistribution of wealth, then you're obviously going to have a welfare state. All right, let me step aside. Eric Bushman, he's waiting in the WBAP newsroom for the very latest breaking news, and we'll check your afternoon drive, your call straight ahead. All right, 4:33 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion, the Rick Roberts Show. Coming up, your chance to win $1,000. Just text the national keyword when you hear it. We'll text you back to confirm your entry. So good luck with that coming up in just a bit. To try and gauge how far we have fallen in this grand experiment known as the United States of America, you really have to know how it was created. Now, we don't teach that as we once did, for that very reason. That compare and contrast can work against you if you're an aggressive, heavy-handed, overreaching government. You can't miss what you didn't know you had to begin with. That seems to be the mantra. So let's look at it for a second. To say that the founding fathers had a difficult job is an understatement. The delegates knew they had to find a way to work together so that we could be one united nation, right? And they knew that they needed one leader who would represent the entire country. But how could they be sure that this leader would not get too much power? Many of the delegates were extremely afraid of giving a central government too much power because they believed it would be no different than having a king, and they had already experienced that. They didn't want it again. Some of the states at that time were extremely small, didn't have many people at all. Should they have the same voice in making laws for the country as the large states with more people? What if the laws were made, but then we found out they weren't good for everyone in the country? Who would decide if the laws were fair for everyone? So they spent months and months and months crammed together, arguing and debating, and pretty heated arguments if you want to get into it. Finally, they came up with a plan. They called it the Constitution. It was decided at that time the central government. Remember I told you we call it the federal government. Back then they called it the central government. It should be broken up into three parts, that each of the parts would have equal power. Those three parts, sometimes they're called branches because like the branches of a tree, they all work together. The three parts or branches would be called the executive, legislative, and judicial. Now, most of you, I assume, already know this. Many, you would be surprised to learn, do not. The executive branch would be the leadership branch. That would include one leader who'd be called the president. He would be helped by the vice president. The president would also have a group of advisors called his cabinet. The president and vice president would be elected by the people of the country, and the president would choose the advisors he or she wanted in the cabinet. The president, of course, if he's married, would have a first lady, and they'd live in the White House. The legislative branch would be the lawmaking branch. The legislators would be elected by the people of the state they represented. Okay? That branch is divided into two parts called the Senate and the House of Representatives. All the lawmakers are called the Congress. If you want to give an umbrella name to them. They meet in D.C. The Founding Fathers finally solved the problem of how to be fair to both the big states and the small states by coming to what is called the Great Compromise. In the Senate, each state is represented by 2 senators. So nowadays, we've got 100 of them. And each has an equal vote when making or approving new laws. In the House of Representatives, each state has a number of representatives depending upon how many people live in the state. So a state with a lot of people, like New York or California, have a lot of representatives. A state with a small number of people, like Rhode Island, would have only a few representatives. Any laws that are made must be approved by both parts of Congress, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. That'll kind of give you an idea of why so many people are upset about the census question in California. California's afraid if you are not a citizen, you won't answer it. Therefore, they'll be shortchanged on the number of people. Therefore, they may lose some representatives. All right, there's that whole news headline in one sentence. The judicial branch is the third branch, the part of the government that has the final say on whether a law is fair to all the people. The leaders of that branch are called the justices, 9 of them on the Supreme Court. The justice who has served the longest is appointed the Chief Justice. They meet in the Supreme Court in D.C., which is often called the highest court in the land. Any American citizen has the right to question a law, but cases must pass through a ton of lower courts at a state level before being presented to the Supreme Court. So, the Founding Fathers also decided that certain laws would be decided by only the states. Now, this is important because this line's gotten pretty blurry here of late. They decided that certain laws would be decided only by the states, others would be decided only by the federal or what they called central government. For example, only the federal government can declare war on another country. Your individual state can't. But states had the right to decide other things like as the way public schools in each state would run. The state leaders liked the way the Constitution divided the powers among the 3 branches. So each state also has its own executive, legislative, and judicial branch. They like that 3-branch system, right? And the head, yes, you're ahead of me now. Each state has an executive branch leader called a governor. Each state has its own lawmaking branch, and each state has its own system of courts. That, in a nutshell, would be enough, I think, to get the interest of most students to figure out, okay, well, I can compare what's going on at a federal level with what's going on at a state level. Do you see what I'm saying? The founders weren't stupid. They weren't stupid. And for those history revisionists that say, well, they could never, like on the Second Amendment, they had muskets back then. They could never have envisioned the AR-15. Doesn't matter. The principle's still the same. All right, so forget that. Doesn't make any sense. But you've got to send it. It's very easy to express an opinion or put forth the truth of a thing. No matter how you filter it, it's still the truth. But people have to know what you're talking about to begin with. Otherwise, you first must educate and then alliterate. There are some topics that come across my console here. Oh, yeah, I really love that. Well, wait. It is so convoluted and abstract in many ways, and not in the public domain. You would have to instruct before you gave an opinion or solicited one. Do you see what I'm saying? That's why education is so important. And I know many of you take me to task when I say if my kids were school age, I would pull them from the public education system in a heartbeat. But that's part of the reason why. The federal government should have no role in educating my kid. Whether it's Common Core, outcome-based education, or any other nonsensical thing that comes down the pike from the federal government. That's not education. That's socializing. That's the bottom line. All right. Let me step aside very quickly. Let's check your afternoon drive. You know, the 18-wheelers have been doing pretty good here lately, except in the rain. I won't go off on you guys on that, but just, tell each other, form a single line so at least we can see to get around, all right? Don't have to worry about the day. It's a beautiful day out. We'll check your afternoon drive, and your chance to win $1,000 is coming up, so stick around for that. 4:43 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. Your call straight ahead. All right, 4:47 the time. Of course, you heard a lot of the teenagers in the March for Our Lives on Saturday talking about, we don't want guns in school, we don't want a prison, we don't want this, we don't want that. That's youthful exuberance. That's youthful emotion left unchecked. They don't want guns in school. They want it to be a prison. I guess we're supposed to wave a magic wand and protect everyone. Well, Kansas is taking a different turn as the debate over arming teachers in schools is, and you're going to hear more and more of this every day as it reverberates across the country. Kansas is doubling down. A new bill would not only authorize arming Kansas school staff, it would hold schools responsible if a shooting were to occur and the teachers and staff were not allowed to be armed. You see where I'm going with it, or where they're going? Here's the exact, it's House Bill 2789. In any action against a unified school district arising out of acts or omissions regarding the possession or use of firearms on the premises of such school district, there shall be a rebuttal presumption of negligence on the part of such school district when it's shown by evidence that such school district did not authorize any employee of such school district other than school security officers to carry concealed handguns. So what they're talking about are not just resource officers, but teachers. It's causing a lot of contention in Kansas, as you might imagine. They're saying American Sniper said violence in school was a matter of when and not if. It's not if our kids will be killed, it's when they will be killed and what we are doing to prevent it. Common sense probably falls someplace in the middle. I don't know that you could hold the school accountable. That would probably be quite a legal case. Vermont, of course, everybody's trying to do something, right? Because these politicians are going to be asking for votes. The Vermont House this week passed legislation imposing new restrictions on gun ownership that include raising the legal age for buying a gun to 21 years old. It'll be interesting to see exactly how that plays out. It's the second time the legislation was approved by the House. Again, at the end of the day, this is the kind of stuff that the government wants us immersed in. Gun control, more gun control, bump stocks, collapsible stocks, the NRAs, the boogeyman. As long as they can keep us all ginned up about gun control, illegal immigration, porn stars, then that's exactly what they want. Because that's the status quo thrives when we are diverted. Our attention is diverted and deflected into the same old minutia that we talk about constantly. They continue, right? They continue doing what they're doing. I mean, it's the truth. All right. You hear about all the money we're giving away, David?
Yes, sir. I know all about the money we're giving away.
We're going to do that quickly, right? As I choke to death.
Oh, it's okay. I mean, it's
it's
got
okay.
These clowns over here.
Well, you're really bad at this. Really, really bad at this. Okay, that's called The Host Gets Choked, and the producer is a deer in the headlights.
Chokes more.
Let me ask you, Lee, what have you heard about the giveaway? It's a pretty good deal, right?
It is $4,000
What?
Yeah, up to $4,000 a day. You have 4 times a day to win.
4 times a day.
Yes, that's right. And you get a chance. You will actually give a word here in just a few minutes that you can text to a number and get a chance to win $1,000.
All right. And we will text you back to confirm your entry. And good luck to you. You can't play, though. You're out of it. Sorry, Lee.
I am? Gosh. I know the word, though. You want me to tell you?
No, not yet.
Okay. All right.
Can't do that yet.
Yeah, okay.
I'll do it. All right. All right. Look, I wasn't trying to give you a civics lesson. It's just I am constantly amazed at how much Americans don't know about their own government. And whether it's illegal immigration, the 4 questions I said, 535 people, not a lot of people that control a country of 300 million, Where do you stand on the Second Amendment? Don't need a 2-3 page essay. Just tell me what you believe. Where do you stand on illegal immigration? Because right now we have open borders. Don't let anybody tell you we don't. We do. Campaign finance reform and term limits. If you get individual politicians off by themselves, oh, yeah, I think term limits are a good idea. But you put them under the umbrella of the federal government, and the 535 people all agree on one thing. No, we don't want those term limits. We don't want that. That'll put us out of business. You're right. If you're there for yourself and not representing your particular state, it should put you out of business. So, all right, that's going to do it for me. Rick Roberts, now my voice is okay. I got choked. Lee, thank you for that. David, you're going to have to work on that a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. God's blessings on each and every one of you, whether we agree or not. That's always my priority. Each and every day. Stick around. Mark Levin's up next, and your chance to win $1,000. I'm Rick Roberts. See you tomorrow at 2 on News Talk 820 WBAP.
We just figured that's how it was, and everybody else was just like us, soaking in the rain, baking in the sun. Don't quit till a job gets done. That's the only way I know. Don't stop till everything's gone. Straight ahead, never turn around. Don't back up, don't back down. A full throttle, wide open. You get tired and you don't show it. Dig a little deeper when you think